They told us Ned Kelly was just a bushranger, a poor Irish outlaw in the 1800s who wore a tin can on his head and fought corrupt police. But what if I told you that story is a lie? What if I told you Ned Kelly was actually one of the last surviving Tartarian kings, and his battle wasn't just with corrupt police, it was with the entire New World Order that had taken over this realm, the same system that erased Tartaria, that buried our past in mud, that replaced living history with fairy tales and false dates. Let's go deep. They say he was born in 1854 in Beveridge, Victoria, but the timelines don't match. His knowledge, his armor, his royal presence, they don't belong to some peasant from a collapsing British penal colony. They belong to a Tartarian bloodline, a warrior king, standing alone in a land that had already been conquered. See, Ned wasn't fighting for gold or rebellion. He was fighting for memory, for truth, for us. He was part of the final resistance of Tartaria, the ancient worldwide civilization that stretched across continents and realms. The builders of the impossible, the ones who harnessed free energy from the ether, who aligned their cities with the stars, who used sound, vibration, and geometry to shape the earth. They were erased in a global reset, the mud flood, and buried beneath layers of lies, but a few survived. And in Australia, there was one left who wouldn't bow. Ned Kelly, and when they saw he wouldn't kneel, they made him an outlaw. They targeted his family, harassed his mother, murdered his father. They knew they had to wipe him out because they were terrified of what he knew. Let's talk about the armor. Mainstream history says he forged it from plowshares and scrap metal in a barn. Are we meant to believe 4 men made a full set of bulletproof steel armor in the bush with no tools or power? Come on, this wasn't scrap metal. This was old world tech, Tartarian craftsmanship, passed down from the ruins, built using knowledge we're told never existed. Each piece was perfectly formed, bulletproof, heat resistant, made not just for protection, but for symbolism. He wasn't just armored, he was crowned. That helmet wasn't just a disguise. It was a mask of war, a message to the controllers. You may have buried us, but we are not gone. And that final standoff at Glenrowan, that wasn't just a train robbery gone wrong. It was a ritual, a last act of defiance, a signal to the others, the few Tartarians still out there, that the war was not over. The townspeople called him a monster. The newspapers painted him as a lunatic, but some remembered, some saw the truth. There's a reason they didn't destroy his image. There's a reason statues of Ned Kelly still stand, because deep down, even the system couldn't kill his story. They turned him into legend because they were too afraid of what he really was. A king, a descendant of the builders, a rebel of the old blood. And when he was finally captured, they made a spectacle of it. They dragged him in chains like an animal. They hanged him like a traitor. They buried his bones in secret. And they erased the truth. But the signs remain. Look around your city. Look at the old world buildings still standing, sandstone banks with Greek pillars, courthouses with domes and impossible towers, star forts still visible from the sky, and all of them misdated, mislabeled, and misunderstood Tartarian. They didn't build those with horse carts. They were dug out, not built up. And Ned Kelly, he came from the people who built them. His death wasn't the end of a life, it was the closing of a chapter, the last stand of Australia's true royalty. And the final Tartarians? They didn't all die, they fled. Beyond the lands we know, beyond Antarctica, across the ice wall, the boundary of our known world, into the forgotten continents, the places on ancient maps marked terra incognita, the lands the elites hide with fake satellites and CGI space lies. They ran, but one stayed behind. Ned stayed for us. He stood his ground in the fire. He became a symbol of resistance. And he knew he would fall, but he also knew his story would rise. They called him a criminal, but his words live on. Such is life. But we know what he really meant. You may silence me, but you will never silence the truth. He fought the machine before we knew what it was. Before the smartphones, before the smart cities, before the digital slavery, he fought it in the dirt, in armor, with fire in his heart and steel in his hands. And now, his spirit is waking people up. We're not supposed to know, but we do. Ned Kelly wasn't the end. He was the beginning. And now it's our turn to carry the torch. The ruins are still here, the lies are still crumbling, and somewhere beyond the wall, the true kings of Earth are watching, waiting, ready to return when the realm is ready to rise.